So this is how you create a flowchart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new diagram. This is using diagrams.net or draw.io, they're the same thing. And you can do this in the website if you want. This is using the app. So first of all, what you don't do is you don't click on flowchart. If you actually click on create a flowchart, all it does is it gives you a flowchart that's sitting there already done. So it's not particularly helpful for creating your own, because it's just giving you one that is already there. So let's close that one and start the way we would normally do, which is create a blank diagram. But before you do that, always remember to give it a name. Okay, so you just, otherwise you'll forget and you'll just have loads and loads of diagrams called blank diagram. Okay, so we're going to call it flow diagram blink, because we're going to create it for the blink program. So create now. So for building this flowchart, I can use the general shapes over here, but that just tells you what they're called. What you might be better doing is using the flowchart options, which might appear like this. So we can just click on this option here to get them, because when you move it over, it tells you what it's actually being used for. Now to start, we always do a start. There's never an end, because Arduino programs keep running forever. You can use an ellipse, or we can use this terminator symbol here. Either are acceptable. So in order to, but what we do need is to add the start. So I'm going to double click inside the box to get start, or with this one, double click inside the box and I can type in start. Okay, I'm going to use the one that it suggests, which is the ellipse. Now the first thing we do is we add a process, and I'm just going to drag that over here. Notice the blue line. The blue line tells I've got the middle aligned correctly. So we do want this flowchart to flow downwards, so the middle blue line is what we're looking for. Now the setup, there's a few stages in here, and you might want to say setup LED, setup switch, setup LCD, although obviously we've not got the one in just this one. But to be honest, just put setup, and you can worry about the details later. The point of a flowchart is to give you an overview of how it works together and what the process is involved. It's not to detail every step. Now I can leave it as it is. I'm going to move over this blue dot and I'm going to move it upwards and drag it upwards to make it a little bit smaller, so I've got more space to put my diagram together. So I want to make my LED blink, so the first thing it's going to do is it's going to turn it on. Now, and turning on an LED is an output, so I'm going to use this one here. It does say data, but we use this for input and output. Get my blue line to line it up again, and then click in the middle and type turn LED on. Now these data ones are used for inputs that are coming, the inputs and outputs. So switches, LEDs, LCDs. Basically, if you're going to observe something happening or it's going to take a sensor reading, it needs to be one of these boxes. Okay, that's probably okay, but I can see if I can I make it any smaller? Yeah, I can make it a little bit smaller just to fit it in a little bit better. Now I need a delay. Now my delay, it's not an input or an output, it's just something that happens on the microcontroller. So I need one of my process boxes again. So double click. Now we know that the command is delay, so you can use delay or you can use pause, it doesn't matter. This is just getting the idea. I'm going to delay for half a second. I'm going to shrink it down to make it a little bit smaller. Now what I can do is I can take these two. So I've highlighted them, I've dragged across them, and I'm now going to copy them. So I'm going to go to copy, and then I'm going to paste them. And I'm now going to drag them down below, get my blue line to line them up in the center again, and this time we want to turn the LED off. There we go. Now I need to link these in sequence. So if I move over the top one, you can see again we've got the little blue crosses and it highlights green when I move over it. Click that and drag down and it's going to point an arrow. Make sure I'm pointing over my green dot below. Green dot to green dot, green dot to green dot, green dot to green dot, green dot to green dot. And now I can move these around and it will follow where I want them to go. So if you do need to move them around to fit, that's good. However, at the end of my delays, I don't go and stop. I go back and I redo and turn my LED on again. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it back I'm going to drag it onto the green one at the top, and I get this kind of two-shaped, reverse S shape, doesn't really matter. I get this line here. Now this is not really good enough, so I'm going to take this blue dot here and I'm going to drag it over, underline, and I get one line that leads all the way back. So I'm now delaying. What do I do next? I go back and I turn the LED on. So to follow my flowchart, I start. At the start, first thing I do is set up, then I turn my LED on, then I wait for half a second, I turn my LED off, wait for half a second, and then I go back and turn my LED on. So that is correct. Now in order to do something with this, as before, you can just save it and that will give you a file that you can edit back in here, but you can't use in a Word document. So what you're going to do is you're going to export as a PNG. Make sure you've ticked the box that says include a copy of my diagram, which it should be. Export. Okay, and then it'll ask you where you want to save it. I'm just going to save this to the desktop, and I get my flow diagram. So what I can then do is I can close this. Discard changes, yes. I can open my diagram, and I save that on my desktop. Tell it that I want all files. Okay, and I've got my flow diagram, and it's open back up, and I can edit it and move it around like that, and I can also take that file and put it into a Word document and it will look correct in there. If we want to ensure that this is as neat as possible, the other thing I can do is I can highlight all of my boxes there and go to Arrange. Now if I haven't and I can go to Align, and if I haven't done this before, I can align them all in the center. That's not going to make any difference because I've already done it. But the other thing I can do is I can go to Distribute, and I can say Distribute Vertical, and that will move them all out so they are equally spaced. So for example, if I think I need a little bit more space, let's move this down. Click on this path over here, this arrow, drag it down to make sure it's still pointing there. I'm going to highlight them all again, and this time I'm going to go to Arrange and Distribute, and I want to distribute them vertically, and you can see how it's now spaced them out again so they are equally spaced. If I'd done this one, I'd probably go back and do that one again. So if you are wanting to do that, what I can do is I can just move them all up. Okay, I'm just moving them all over the place. I'm not really worried about where they're going. Now this is the important one. This is going to fix the bottom. So I need to leave myself enough space, so let's move it to there. Highlight all of them, and I can go to Arrange and Align, put them in the center. That lines them all up, and then Arrange, Distribute, and I want to distribute them vertically, and that spaces them out equally. What I will need to do, of course, is just play around with some of these arrows. They're still connected to the right place, but they're not quite how I want them to look. And there we go, that's my diagram. So let's close this one, let's do a new one. Right, so I'm going to create a new diagram, and this time what I want to do is I want to create a switch to turn my LED on and off. So flow diagram. It is very useful to always start with flow diagram or circuit diagram so that you know which of the two your file actually is. Flow diagram, and we want to use a switch and LED. So I'm going to create that. So for this one, I need to find my flow charts, which is here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start. I'm going to use the same setup as before because we're just setting up. Now you could do this separately, and you could set up the LED and the switch separately, or you could just write setup LED and switch, and I've got both of those contained there. Helps if I spell switch right. So let's correct that there. I'm going to leave myself a little bit more space in order to put my arrow in. So this time the first thing we need to do is ask a question. Now the question is the rhombus or the diamond, so I'm going to click that and put that in the middle. And the question that I need to ask, remember we always need a yes or no question here, so is the button, so I've called it a switch, is the switch pressed? It's a question and it has a yes or no answer. We can only put yes or no questions in here, nothing else. And now I've got two options. Now I'm going to, because I've got two options and I'm going back to ask the same question, I'm going to lay this out to the two sides. So the first option is the switch is pressed, in which case I need to turn on my LED, so I want my output 1. I'm going to put it over here and I'm going to say turn LED on. And now if the answer is no, I'm going to put one here, and you can see it has extended my page, so that's fine. I'm going to line it up so it's in the same place as that one, and I'm going to double click and say turn LED off. Now I can make my connections. Start goes to setup, setup goes to my question. Now there are two possible answers. I'm going to take one answer over here and down to the green dot on here, and I'm going to do the same thing with this side. Oh, didn't quite get to the green dot there, so I deleted it with the delete key. There we go. Now for both of these, when I have finished them, I need to go back to my question. So I've done that, and then I'm going to realign. I'm going to put my arrows on the outside, try and get the minimum of crossing arrows as possible, which is why I'm doing it this way. And again, put it, and I'm connecting to the top of my question again, so I'm going to pull this over to the left, pull this over to the left. Now I'm now looking at this and thinking, is that a bit wider? So at this point that's correct, but I can play around with the aesthetics a little bit. I'm going to move it in a little bit, I'm going to move that one in a little bit, and now I'm going to reroute my lines. So that's got to come down. Oops, too far. I want to make one line. Again, click on this one, drag the blue dot down to make one line, bring these guys in a little bit. Then I've got the same diagram. The diagram was correct before, now I've just made it a little bit neater, so I've got the same diagram. Once more, I'm going to export as PNG, make sure that include a copy of my diagram is ticked, export, and this time flow diagram, switch and LED, the name is there, and I've got it.